Hi everyone, and welcome to Nonsense Whisky Live. It's been a while, I know it's been a while. Massive apologies from me. I am going to try and get into this live stream business again. Just now that, and there we go, straight away. I forgot to pause the actual stream on there. We do that every time. Roy does that, I do that. Never mind. Right, let's say hello to a few people who dropped in early. There's a couple of people in before we start, and then I'll get my guest in. We're going to have a chat about scoring whiskey and things like that. Scrolling right up, we've got Ardbaggy, who is in first, probably about half an hour early. Poor lad, must have not anything to do on a Wednesday. But hello, dude. Thanks for coming in. Jimmy Jazz is in. New Jam Drinker. He's a channel. You should go and check him out for sure. Scrolling down. We've got McCallum Finer Rare, of course. The Doc is in. Thank you very much. I think he said he's in Scotland at the moment, which is awesome. We have Ebhead. Thanks for coming in, dude. Nice to meet you. The other last time as well as the Doc, of course. I think going down. That's it. Tabasco. I might be saying that wrong. Also, forgive the big red face. As my guest and I will tell you, it's very hot at the moment, very humid, and all these lights aren't helping. So if I look a bit damp, it's probably because I am. Never mind. We'll crack on with it. Dwayne's in. Hello, bro. Thank you very much for coming in, Dwayne. Good to speak to you again. Causeway Coast Whiskey Reviews is in. Last Drop is in. Another channel. Definitely go and check him out. Max is in. And Whiskey Shed, another whiskey channel. Don't go and check him out. Saying here, New Drum Drinker says you don't look nervous. Well, I feel it, dude. I feel it. I get a bit of pre-match jitters. But hopefully we're going to be drinking some fine drams today. That's a pretty good time to get my guest in, I think. Most of you will know this guy, I think. But if you don't, you should definitely check out Malt Review. But this is Jason, a.k.a. Whisky Rover. I'll say hi to the world, dude.
Hi, you just caught me changing something on the laptop there.
Sorry, I probably went a bit quick. I probably said something about 5 minutes, but then I was just like firing through. Let's get the guest on.
Or something, don't worry. Nah, cool. Evening, everybody.
There you go. That's Jason. So Jason, I could tell them about you, but you may as well tell them about yourself, what you do, and really what you're doing in a whiskey capacity right now.
What do? We just provide a platform for people to write about what they love about whiskey. And it seems to be going well. What do? I occasionally write the odd article, and I provide a little bit of direction on the site. And it's hard to put into words what we do sometimes because we have so much good fun doing it.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of the key, isn't it, really? And we say that a lot in the Whiskey Tube world. A lot of us talk in the background. We talk about how things are going. I don't know what it's like for you actually, but in the summer months we have a real big lull in kind of viewership. It's usually the kind of core people, the guys that are in the chat right now. Everyone sticks around for the whole year, but we have this kind of shark fin at Christmas, and then it really like plateaus over summer, and then it picks up again in winter. So I don't know if you kind of keep track of those stats, or if you see that kind of viewership dipping down.
We do have all the stats. We have stats coming out of our backside. So Phil's in the comments, but he'll tell you we do a weekly roundup of the stats for the staff. Some of the guys couldn't care about the stats, but some people seem really interested in what's the top article for the last month or something, or how the site's going. So we tell people maybe the last 30 days how what the top articles are. The last week, maybe how many visitors, how we're doing overall for the year, what's coming ahead for the next week. So that goes out every Sunday, if I remember, on our Facebook group. And yeah, the guys can just see how the site's ticking over. Yeah,
I mean, for me, I'm like immediately off topic, but I really love my statistics. So I keep this huge spreadsheet of every view that I've gained. It started at 300 views channel total, and it's now on something like 640,000 total views, and it's got to the point now where I can't stop, because if I stop it ruins itself. But I also don't put much stock in which videos do well and which ones don't, because I like to just review whatever I want, but I do like to keep a bead on the things that really do well, and things like Johnny Walker on a worldwide platform of YouTube do really well, but then those people don't tend to stick around for much else. They just tend to watch that and off they go.
Exactly. I mean, the last couple of days we've done 2 American bourbons, and traditionally bourbons aren't our biggest articles, especially the craft, the smaller things. Even some of the interviews we do aren't big immediate ones, although probably I think the Lady of the Glen one, for whatever reason, was the biggest one we've done so far. Sometimes it just timing picks up, or just, I don't know, Google maybe picks it up and it just runs. So we can track everything. I think Mark likes his stats. I think Norcha likes her stats as well. Personally, I'm tired of them sometimes. But like you're saying, you log in their place and you can see what's happening the day, and you automatically are drawn towards the numbers. You're like, what's been popular and why? Where's that traffic coming from? And sometimes there's some real surprises, and then there's the articles probably like for yourself as well, which just consistently tick over long term and your real bread and butter.
Yeah, and for me, it's a good thing to kind of hit both of those, I guess. I mean, one of the things I try to do is I really want to do more independent bottlings, but they tend to immediately bomb. It's really peculiar. Like obviously the core fans tend to watch it, and I get a few comments. But if I say I'd typically get maybe 200 to 300 views in the first week of a video, an independent bottler would only get 150 views. So it's difficult for me as a quote unquote creator to keep pushing that content when I know it's not as widely received. But then I also don't want to keep covering. I always keep this bottle down here as my favorite example. The Whisky Wednesday gave me this. This is Officer's Choice Blue Label. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of trying this.
No, I don't think it'll be a pleasure, is it?
Well, do you know what? It's not the worst whiskey I've ever tried. And if we use your scale, which we'll go into in a bit, of 1 being the Fujikai, which I have had the pleasure of trying, and called that video the worst whiskey I've ever tried, this would beat it, I think. So I think if you would give the Fujikai a 1, I think you would be forced to give this at least a 2.
Okay.
I've got some, so maybe I'll send you some.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, but it's basically a neutral grain spirit mixed in with some actual whiskey, so it's like a gin and a whiskey mixed together.
It's like Hay Club then. That's what we're...
Yeah, it's got that kind of like cheap, nasty vibe about it. But
industrial.
Yeah. I do like to keep that around because it's a good example of what not to do. But let's talk about scoring whiskey a little bit, shall we? Because so you touched on it recently with the Scotch Test Dummies on their 12 Hours of Boom. So really, what I wanted to know from you is, we'll go into the whole thing in a bit, but like you said before, you didn't used to score and then you started to score. That must have been a pretty tough decision to make between you and Mark. Yeah,
well, I started probably in 2010 writing the odd review, and I never scored because you want people to read your thoughts. You don't want people to scroll to the bottom or look for that magic number. And Mark was always the same as well. And then when we talked about coming together in 2017, one of the first things we agreed on was, well, we probably should score, but we'll do it on our own terms. So we both agreed on the 1 to 10. And I actually think that there is a scoring guide on the site, but I'm sure from memory, and I could be wrong here, I think Adam wrote that for us. And it just lays it out very simply, 1 to 10. I mean, there's some people do the A plus B minus thing, which to me gets a little bit complicated. There's the 100-point scale, but to me, the 100-point scale is very pro-industry, pro-positive whiskey. So, I mean, you could score something in the 70s, and technically that's probably a poor mark-ish or substandard. But then, you pull the average consumer off the street and say, oh, this scored 79 or 81 out of 100. I think it's meant to be a fantastic whiskey, but it's not. So I think it's quite misleading, the 100-point scale, in that unless you have the knowledge to back up using it. So we decided on 1 to 10. 5's the average, 6 is good. I think you've got Phil Causeway Coast in the comments, but he was telling me recently somebody had a, shall we say, a go at him in a pub for scoring a whiskey an 8 out of 10. And 8 out of 10 is a very good score to us. We don't give out 8 out of 10 very often, so that person should have really just looked at the scoring guide and then put that into context. So to us, the scoring is still difficult. We try and do reviews where maybe there's a couple of us giving our opinions, and the scores can vary a lot. Phil again, Springbank 15, say no more, but it's all subjective, it's all individual, and the guys are free to score how they like, when they like. Even if I don't agree with it, and I mean, I like Springbank 15, but I totally appreciate where Phil was coming from. You know, he's used to Irish muck, you know, so, you know, to him, it's probably off the scale. But I'm just joking, Phil. But yeah, you know, everybody has a, you know, a valid opinion. I think a lot of people are warming to the way we score things, and they're starting to pick up on the fact that, you know, 4 or 5 isn't that bad, you know. I think one of the whiskies we've got tonight got a 4, and it's a solid drinker, but, you know, I wouldn't rush out to buy it. But, you know, I think we've just got to look at scoring again, because I do think it's very, very biased towards the industry. You know, people can write a fairly lukewarm review, or there's a review coming on Friday, which just happens to be Phil's again, which scores quite low, 2 bottles, and yet I know on some of the big leading websites this bottle's been getting 83, 84 out of 100, and you're just like, how does this compute, you know? And I appreciate that's their own opinion, they're welcome to it, but I do think there's somewhat of a bias sometimes to, you know, trying to butter up people and not being honest. And I think, you know, to me, you have to be honest, because, you know, this stuff isn't cheap anymore. And somebody could go out and buy a bottle, and I do remember one person bought a bottle on the back of a good review from me, and he didn't like it, you know, and we spoke about it afterwards, and it was just one of those things. It probably was a little bit out there in terms of whiskey, you know, a little bit more extreme than he was used to. But, you know, we talked about the score, and I think he came around to my understanding of why I did what I did. But I wouldn't want, you know, I don't throw 7, 8, 9s out, because then my inbox will be full of people like, what are you talking about, you know? So
yeah, and it's just a constant tough thing. I mean, especially when you get more and more prolific, I guess, like you guys do. You know, I'm not sure what you said the other day. I think you said you were like the 2nd most viewed.
yeah, I mean, if it depends where you go. If you go to, like, you've got Google Analytics, and you've got is it Alexa, the Amazon one? So these, if you look at, I think I forget his name just now, but Whiskey Files used to do like the top blogs based on Alexa and their ranking, and we've moved slowly up, a lot quicker than we thought. But we are, if you're going on that sort of category of website, which is just whiskey reviews and whiskey articles, not like say Whiskey Base, which is you know, a little bit different with the library and everything else. You know, we're probably 2 or 3. I think we're 2. So I think technically we are behind the Whiskey Wash, but, you know, those guys, if I'm being polite, ship out lots more articles on a daily basis, and they do a lot of clickbait, and they do a lot of news, and we don't do news or clickbait. So we're just quite happy where we're sitting and doing our own thing, which people like.
Yeah, definitely. It's just as I was going to say, like the higher you get up there, the more people you're getting in, and then you start bringing in not only just the kind of best of the fans, but also the worst of the fans as well. So, like I was saying before the show started, that I was thinking about doing a compilation video of negative comments.
Yeah.
And I got the idea of another YouTuber who doesn't do whiskey, but the best thing that they got negative comments on the negative comment video, saying, you know, why are you concentrating on the negatives? And he's like, no, I'm just having a bit of fun to show you the kind of stuff that I receive on a daily basis. I don't get it daily, but, you know, we get all sorts of stuff comes through. We tend to share it between ourselves in the background in the Whiskey Tube, because a lot of it, like, it used to hurt. The first few that came through used to hurt, but now you just kind of like, well,
yeah, you just shrug it off, don't you? I mean, the classic ones on our website are Phil again, his Proper 12 review, which just seemed to have a life of its own for a couple of months. Just the comments on it were hilarious. And probably our White Walker review for a while as well had quite a bit. And then you've got the really good comments like Adam's piece on drinking too much, you know. So, you know, people are free to drop in on the site. They can leave a comment. The good thing about the comment is it goes straight to the person that wrote the review, and we encourage the guys to reply in their own time. And there's some great replies from all the writers, and sometimes me and Mark will maybe chip in as well if need be. But generally, everybody's pretty civilized. There's only the occasional idiot, which you expect, or you know, sometimes we come to an agreement after a while. The comments are, I think they're a useful tool because there's a lot of whiskey sites out there, or these official big sites, that don't do comments. You don't have that interaction, you don't have that access. And for us, it's really about, if you've got a different point of opinion and you put it across well, then, you can't argue with that. You've got every right to have a valid opinion. And, we've had people who've typed up as one today, one disagreeing with a peak comment of mine. I had to split it into 3 different screens on Instagram because it was such a long comment, and I wanted to get it up so people could read it all in their own time. So there's regulars who comment all the time. There's people that come out of the blue. I'm always keeping an eye, probably more on the stats on the comments and the stats, because sometimes you can miss things, or because it goes directly to the writer, I don't get notified that, say someone's kicking off about Phil's latest Springbank review or something like that. So it's good to keep tabs. And yeah, there's a lot, as with the community on YouTube, there's some right bell ends, I suppose, and there's some really, really good people. So we just, each to their own, especially some of the stuff we review as well, and some of the scores we give. I'm actually surprised we actually don't have more people kicking off when we start giving out some of the scores we do.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been watching sort of some of the comments go past here, and there's obviously I can't go through them all. I'll say hello to a few people in a moment, but we had, I think Whisky Whims might have said, I'll have to scroll up to try and find it. He said, he goes, he really likes the scoring. Yeah, here we go. Malt review for me is a lot more honest, but at times leaning on the harsh side. But I think, although, I mean, I'm sure you take that as a compliment, because it's really what you guys like to do. I mean, I try to perhaps be a bit too positive sometimes. I don't like to, because I think to myself, like, one thing I always said is that even if I don't like a whiskey, it could be someone's favourite. Like the Johnny Walker Red Label is a great example. There's history of that being like a certain president's favourite whiskey, but that was in the 30s when it probably was actually a good whiskey, and now it isn't.
Yeah.
So I try not to be too trashy, but there are times when I've even got a playlist now. It's one of my best playlists, which is Terrible Whiskey, I called it. And it's only got maybe 4 in there, and I think that's the Johnny Walker White Walker, which I know Diageo watched, by the way, because their rep told me that they were very disappointed, but in a jokey kind of way. I was like,
they do watch a lot of we've had Callum have certainly watched and commented about us, I know. So we've they are watching us. They definitely are.
Yeah. The other ones on that list are I think I put Johnny Walker Red Label in there just to kind of, it's not, I really don't like it. The Fujikai 10, of course, and the Hay Club Clubman, because I didn't mind the Hay Club. The only issue I had with it was that it was far too expensive for what it is.
Yeah, for what it was.
It does its job. It's drinkable, but the Hay Club Clubman was just diabolical, and just, I don't know. Personally, I think it shouldn't exist. The other one's fine. Anyone who wants to buy that can carry on. Don't bother cheaping out on the nasty one.
No. I mean, for me, the hardest reviews to write are the very boring whiskies. They're not the great ones or the really terrible ones. They're the hard ones to write, the ones that really don't say much. I mean, I used to be quite harsh. Was I harsh? I just felt it was realistic. I'm just quite direct, and I was brought up a spade's a spade, and whatever else is whatever else, and that's the way it is. And there is a lot of inept whiskey out there. And then Phil Causeway Coast joined our team, and he's probably even more grumpier than I am. But at the same point in time, people take notice when they give a good score. Are we slightly harsh? I think we're just realistic. I think all the guys are quite driven by price as well. We've only got so much money, and you want to spend it the best way possible. And there's a lot of overpriced whiskey out there at the moment, if you can get your hands on some of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree, and that's I'm fully on board with that. I often say on my videos that I used to say a cut-off of 50 quid, and then I got myself in hot water by saying cut-off as if I was ignoring anything that was more. So I expanded on that a little. I don't mean a cut-off, but really, if it's less than £50 and someone like yourself says this is worth a try, I'll probably buy a bottle. It's easy for me to sort of spend that. There's Patreon coming in, and there's things like that. So that's an expense, let's say.
Yeah.
If it's over 50 quid, very often I will have to try it before I put my money against it. I'll have to try and get a sample from a friend or into a bar or whatever. Very, very rarely will I just drop like £65 on a bottle that I don't know. A few changes to that are, like, I'll show you this. I think you've tried this. I can't remember if you've covered this one or not. This is the Cotswolds Founders Choice.
Yeah, we've done a lot of Cotswolds. Probably not me. I think Mark and Adam are quite big on Cotswolds. So yeah, we've definitely covered that.
Yeah, and that, I mean, they're my local distillery, so I tend to support them with whatever they release anyway. So I just bought that, but it turned out to be really good, which is a good thing for me. And it's really surprising that it's 3 years old, but yeah, there's a few people here saying, like Roy says he remembers my £50 limit. I was like, yeah, so I had to change that. It was, I don't want to say limit because I have spent more than that several times. Not very often. I'm not Mr. Megabucks, that's for sure. And sometimes that holds me back, but I find that a lot of my core audience are really into the affordable whiskey, so they want to see what I think about no age statements and the kind of, shall we say, the poorer end of travel retail, which seems to be a lot of travel retail now.
Yes.
And I don't mind spending sort of 30-40 quid on whatever's in the airport to review it and then maybe say don't buy it, actually it's not that good. Because yeah, I mean, like a good example is Ralphie. Ralphie doesn't tend to review anything that doesn't have a number on it or is something that he doesn't like. He only reviews things that he likes, which is fine, but I'd quite like to know what he hates.
Yeah, I think it would be important too as well. But that's his approach. I don't agree with it, but I mean it works for him. I think to me it's, people talk about whiskey fabric and such like, and there's a lot of positivity, but sometimes it's covering over some of the poorer whiskies. And you know, I won't rattle off any names, but you know, people aren't tackling, you know, or calling out the ones that are poor or overpriced. And there's a lot of it at the moment, I think. But your Cotswolds was a good price for a good whiskey, I remember. So yeah, it can be done.
Just got a super chat in from the Scotch 4 Dummies. I'm flying their colours tonight. So they're must be up. I don't know what time it must be over there. It must be fairly mid-afternoonish. So hopefully you're not sitting at your desks or something. But he says, great shirt and hit the likes. Hopefully everyone hits the like button. But, you know, I don't tell people to do that. You can hit the down like as well if you like. The beautiful thing about YouTube is that people think that the thumbs down is a negative. But the overlording algorithm actually treats it as viewer engagement even still. So it actually comes through as a bit of a positive in the end when you spin it. Yeah, something that's overly negative doesn't necessarily mean it's a terrible video, basically, is what they're trying to say. It could just mean it's very controversial, and that's good for YouTube. They like that. Yeah, so it does maybe make people want to make content that's very controversial. I don't tend to push on that, but if you really wanted to make it big in YouTube, all you've got to do is make controversial video after controversial, and you'll be soaring.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same on, say, Instagram. You know, you just post pictures of Balvenie or Pappy Winkle or Macallum, mostly unopened as well, and you know, you're already in the sect. You know, you're on your way. I think, you know, if people are a little bit truer to themselves and a little bit more honest, and just show what they like and tell people why they like it or why they don't like it, I think people pick up on that and appreciate that a lot more.
Definitely.
So, yeah, that's what we do, I guess, in a roundabout way.
One comment actually leads me nicely on. Whisky Wednesday, another channel. Definitely go and check him out. If you don't know who he is already. He said, is that a bottle of Bellmead bourbon? He says he's now very interested. So he probably wasn't that interested in the stream beforehand, but now he's seen that, he's interested. Yes, that is a bottle of that. And Jason was kind enough to send me a sample of that, because we're going to talk about it as part of their scoring system at Malt, and it being, I think it came out today, didn't it? You gave it a 4 out of 10?
Yes, that's right. I mean, this bottle was a gift. I had good friends over from California earlier in the year, and they brought over some stuff which we couldn't really get over here. And this is, I think John is one of his sort of easy go-to drams. You know, he likes his bourbon, and maybe the end of a hard day, this is one he'll go to with that little bit of sherry in it as well. And he's quite happy with that, you know. So they left me this, and yeah, it's going down reasonably well. Shared it a couple times, but it's a half-size bottle. It's bottled at, is it 46? Sorry, it's got one of these glitzy labels, which doesn't work well under light. 45.2%. And it's sourced whiskey from MGP, finished in, I think it's 9 to 11 years old, 30% rye, and it's finished in Oloroso. Although the distillery that bottle this do have their own stuff, this range is, I think they've got some wine finishes as well. This is all source stock, which is just an American or an Irish thing, I think, really.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about MGP a few times on kind of whiskey tube stuff, and it's often difficult because if you just go on their websites, you don't really find any information about that.
Yeah.
I got myself in hot water once on this big Facebook group, the Whiskey Tribe group, because I said that Tin Cup whiskey. I don't know if you ever tried that.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
I said that in the UK, it's kind of like a bit of a lying whiskey because it just says American whiskey, Colorado on it. It doesn't say anything else. In America, they're forced, in their state at least, they're forced to label it as saying that it's sourced from MGP and that it's not actually what we say it is, blah, blah, blah. But in the UK, they're not forced to do that. So it doesn't say that at all. It just says this is this. And I had to do some real digging to find out that it was sourced. I personally, I think it's a bit naughty to fly the banners of your own thing when it isn't your own thing, but it's not against the rules, so you can't be talking about it.
It's similar to the Teeling thing, you know. They've been bottling for years, and yet they've only realistically just started bottling their 3-year-old whiskey this year. But no, we reviewed the Sagamore rye, and it looked like it was all from the States and Sagamore. And on the back label, in the smallest writing possible, right at the bottom, because it was an American bottle, it had sourced from Indiana or something on it, which you know is MGP.
Yeah.
So they are showing it on the label, but my goodness, sometimes you've got to really, really look hard to find it.
Absolutely. Before we get into it, Roy's just said, ask JJ to share his 1920s blender's glass. You've got it to hand.
1 minute. I know what it is. Hold on. Why does he want that?
Well, while he's off, we'll have a little sip of the Bell Mead. Now, as you said earlier, that they've scored it 4 out of 10, but I'm sure we'll go into the reason why in a bit later. But it's not actually a negative.
No, I think it's solid. I mean, for me, yeah, I mean, I think a 4 out of 10 still. There's still, if you look at our scoring guide that Adam did, I think 4 out of 10 still has positives. You know. Right, so there you go, Roy. Whatever you want to do with that, you can.
He wants to know how you use it.
I haven't used it for a while. I prefer these guys now. But no, if I've got a really small sample of something, then I would go to this, or particularly really old distillate, or one of these unicorn whiskies, and I'd probably trot this guy out. But more general everyday stuff, it's one of these whiskey-based glasses, which are robust and just suit me. I'm quite happy with them. These are expensive, delicate. This is still my original one. It hasn't smashed yet, which is very rare from talking to friends. People, I mean, how do you dry them? You know, is another art form as well. Yeah, so I mean, they are great, but very fragile.
Yeah, I mean, when I started the channel, I used to use a cut glass tumbler on the videos. I felt like I was trying to give a more relaxed atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I had a few disagreements with a few people. They said, and I said, sort of, people like, don't worry, when I'm assessing whiskey, because obviously I don't just sit in front of the camera and just make stuff up. I think about it beforehand and I do a bit of assessing. And I said, don't worry, I'm using a nosing glass for that. So when I'm enjoying it on the camera, I'm just enjoying it and recounting my notes from previous.
Sure.
And it wasn't enough for people, and I was getting so many negative comments that I bowed to the peer pressure of it all, and now I use the old Glencairn just to stave off that negativity.
Yeah, I mean, I will make some comments to people about glassware, particularly tumblers, but you know, it's your choice at the end of the day. You know, just, I mean, it's more these adverts where they're talking, and you know, there's, you know, glitzing the brand or the whiskey, and yet they're serving it in a tumbler of ice, or you know, there's this lavish tasting you're seeing on Instagram, and yet they've got tumblers. And I think, yeah, I did see Norcha's probably watching. I'm not sure in Holland, but she had a Chichibu tasting recently, and I'm sure the hotel didn't have enough Glencairns, and they had to have some Chichibus in basically what were effective little tumblers. So glassware is really important, but people do get a little bit over the top about it. I try not to anymore. I mean, you've probably got the trinity there of what you want to use, and you've maybe got the old one like that there. I mean, I've got all sorts of shapes and sizes over there, but go with what you like.
I'll show you one of the worst ones I've got. I've got this tasting, and it's a Bushmills glass, a Bushmills tumbler. I keep this on the shelf just because it's a nice little piece, but it's square. So when you drink from it, you drink from the flat end, and it goes everywhere. It goes down the side of your face. You have to then drink from the corner.
Yeah, the corner. Like
this, and it's, yeah, so I don't use that. I've got 3 of them from the tasting because nobody wanted to take them home. So I was like, oh, if they're free, I'll take them.
You probably put I think it's the Red Bush is Phil's favourite Bushmill. So you probably drink it out of that, you know, and probably give it an extra bit of flavour, maybe. Yeah.
So the this one here, this is a sherry finish.
Yeah, they didn't specify the duration. Finished in Oloroso sherry casks. That's probably pretty much it in terms of information. You've got the old surgeon warning on the back, and a lot of, you know, one of these brands that seems to like showcase its age and you know, its history and all this and that. Yeah, it's just all lip service, but no, it doesn't really say. Finished in the same manner of a fine Scotch. We blend barrels from our oldest reserve stock, sourced, it should say there, and rest the bourbon in Oloroso sherry casks until perfection is achieved. Rich, intrinsic, balanced, this bourbon is one for the ages.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you you shake your head there, and I tend to do the same thing because I do review sample sizes. I think if most people do, I think it's fine. But if I do have a bottle, nearest bottle, just got the nearest bottle. Picked this up at the airport recently, the Ardbeg Coraviecan, probably saying that. But I never talk about the box or the bottle really in a review unless it's something really, really nice, like if it has like a really weird inflection to the bottle or whatever. Because I find that the stuff they're putting on the bottles, like we just read out there, is utter nonsense, and
it means nothing, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's just, especially when you know that they're not making it, which is fine. You know, like you said, it's fine, and it's good that they're trying to build up the profile of their brand. I like their story, for instance, this Bellmead story about it being like a few generations later and reopened after closing. That's fine, and they are making their own stuff.
Yes, and Green Breer Distillery.
That's it. Yeah.
So, you know, this maybe is a gateway into what they're going to do there. That was interesting, the historical. I think the guys behind the distillery, or they went out for a drive and they saw what was left of the family heritage, the distillery, and they got the idea to start up again. So maybe this is helping them, I guess, to bring in some revenue. It's getting something on the shelf immediately. So from that point of view, you can see it, you know, why people do it.
Yeah. Definitely. This so this dram, so you scored it a 4 out of 10. So like as you said earlier, on a lot of scoring systems that would be really on the poorer end, but for you guys that's kind of more like just maybe slightly below average.
Yeah. It's like the Scottish football team. It's, you know, it's there or thereabouts. You know, pretty. Yeah. I think you know, it's. I think at the end of a day sort of drink, you know, you're gonna have you need a little bit of vanilla or a little bit Oloroso. You know, I think it serves a purpose. I think it's very for its age. I was still a little bit surprised. Just it didn't have that complexity. Maybe it's been washed away by the finish they've applied to. You know, certainly it's got a really nice colour, and there is a emphasis a wee bit on the sherry side of things as well. But yeah, it didn't sing so much to me. But I mean, like you're saying, you can take the positives out of that because it's actually, you've had far worse. I've had far worse. So it didn't float my boat, but you know what? It's okay on a lot of fronts. But 4 or 5, I'm always there or thereabouts a point within. So sometimes I think about, is this a 5 for me? And I think if it had a little bit more depth and it wasn't so heavily sherry finished, I think it probably would have got the 5.
Yeah, I can completely get on board with that as well. Whisky Whims has just gave us a super chat. He says he's got to go, Vin and Jason. Have a wee dram. Cheers, dude. Thank you very much. If you don't know who Whisky Whims is, it's another channel. You should definitely go and check him out. Lots more channels coming out of. I don't want to say woodwork. That's not fair, but it's more and more channels doing the thing, because it's not that hard to start. That's the important thing. It's good to get going, and these guys struggle in the now kind of more crowded space, I would say. I suppose it's the same with you guys, really, isn't it? Because although what you do is probably slightly more official, but the blogging world is very, very similar, isn't it? Like they're capable of putting out content very, very quickly, getting news very quickly.
No, definitely. I think a few years ago it was probably saturated. I guess there were lots of people doing very similar things. Other people now, life is got in the way. They don't really publish as much. Some of the guys I know personally as well, they've got other responsibilities that maybe drifted away from whiskey, but there's still a core bunch there, and I'm sure there'll be new sites springing up as well. I used to just go and scrolling whiskey websites looking for writing talent, people that were always on the lookout for new talent, new voices. Phil is one of those people we picked up. My family are from, or part of my family's from the Ireland, and I was looking up the Causeway Coast, and it came up with a whiskey blog for some reason on Google, obviously matching my history together. And I went and had a look, and I'm sure it was the Bowmore Black Rock, which was atrocious, saturated in colour, and I just thought, this guy's got talent, and I just like reading people's blogs, but I haven't been able to do much of that recently at all.
Yeah.
But there's some good writers on Instagram as well, taking a good photo, and then they're given a really good historical synopsis, and then they're given their own notes. And you know what? Sometimes I just feel like saying to them, you could expand on that, maybe not in that format, but maybe a blog, or maybe with us. Just we've picked up a couple guys and submissions from that route, or just asking around. And saying that, I think as well, Whiskey Apocalypse announced tonight that he's finishing up. He's posted a very forthright letter on his website as to why he stopped the blog. It's well worth a read. It's typical him.
I didn't know that, actually, so yeah, I'll go and check that out. Because
literally this evening, he's a fan of ours, so we'll see. We'd love to have him on board, but he's just very direct and honest. He's got his own style. He's very Glaswegian, and that comes across in his writing. But I love reading what he has to say, because it's honest and it's him. And that'll be a loss as well if he does decide to hang up.
Yeah, definitely. And we see a few people disappearing from the YouTube world. It's surprisingly easy to do when you're enthusiastic and you're just starting and you want to smash out the content. But then all it takes is a week of being ill or on holiday or whatever to kind of change things up. Or as you know, have a young family around.
Yeah,
that sort of drags. I mean, I don't have those sort of ties yet, so I'm kind of capable of still putting them out. But it might still change for me. I've barely missed a week since I started. But when I eventually do have that family, maybe I'll have to take a step back slightly. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just planning's key. For me, it's the joke behind the scenes on the website was we had a baby buffer, so literally we had most of May all laid out. Even now, all of July is laid out, so we've got that flexibility. If something did happen to somebody, which can happen, life things happen. So, Adam's going off to write for Cider. Some of the guys have had life events; they haven't been able to write more. So we've got that flexibility. And if it had been a one-man band, that would really just knock you out. But because we're a core of maybe 6 or 7 core writers, and then behind that we've maybe got another 10, 15 guys who maybe chip in once a month, once 2 months. We can write these things out and just keep going with the daily thing.
Absolutely. So I feel like some of the guys in the comments are still asking us about this whiskey that we're not talking about.
Okay, sorry.
So the one thing I want to ask you definitely is about going back to the scoring system. What is it about this dram that makes it not a 5 or a 6, or not a 2 and a 3. So I mean, I know you said it's there and thereabouts, so let's give it a 1 point buffer. But what is it about this that doesn't notch it up or notch it down?
Well, it's drinkable, so that rules out one. Yeah, it's just fair. It's fairly average. It's thereabouts. You know, sometimes it's hard to put into words. You just have, you know, you're going on your collective bank of experience. You know, you've had some great bourbons, you've had some poor bourbons, and recently this year I've been drinking a lot of bourbons, just doing a little bit of exploration around America, and this sort of feels like a 4 or a 5 to me. You know, it's not singing on the palate. It's almost very muted, I think. You know, it's only got maybe, you know, I laugh sometimes at your American YouTubers who, you know, have a bourbon and start trotting out all these flavor notes, you know, whereas a lot of the time bourbons are vanilla, cinnamon, you know, like there's a real core group of flavors and not much else. This one's got that and maybe a little bit of sherry tint on it, like I said. But yeah, I mean, I have a whiskey, and normally that first taste, I know where I'm going with it. Very few change that opinion, but you have a couple more attempts, especially with one that's not really doing anything at all. You give it a chance. Water as well is a big thing, and see where it takes you. So to me, it's not a bad whiskey, but it's not a good whiskey. It's not a very good whiskey. So it's that 4-5 mark, sort of, for me, and that's not a negative, you know. I think a lot of people see 7 as average, but in our system, a 5's an average.
Yeah, I think it's fully agreed. I mean, I don't know what this costs a bottle. I don't think you can even get it in the UK, so it's kind of irrelevant. But if it was fairly cheap over there,
yeah, I think it amazes me some of the prices you see for these American bourbons. You know, I'd be buying them by the caseload if I was over there, because compared to Scotch, it's very affordable, I think.
Yeah, and I think I mean, like you said earlier about your guys considering price or cost, and I think I try to do that a lot myself, because it's important to, you know, it could be the best whiskey in the world, but if it's £2 a bottle, what's the point?
Yeah.
But I would think to myself, like, I was trying to think of an example of what I had recently that it's gone from my head. But I tried a whiskey recently that was about £45 a bottle. And I said in the thing, you know, I mean, I like it. It's a nice whiskey, but I can't really recommend it because it's about £10 too expensive for my tastes.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at. I mean, if I always say to people on the videos, if you've got money burning a hole in your pocket, because let's face it, some people do have that, then the £45 for an average whiskey is all right. Carry on, buy it. But for me, they need to be told that, you know, you've got to vote with your wallet, haven't you? So it's bring it back down. Hopefully we'll start seeing prices come down again, but I really don't think that's going to happen for a while. Not until all of the age statements are gone and we're saturated with no age statements. What an awful time that would be.
Yeah, I think people need to vote with their. I think people in whiskey are far too forgiving sometimes. You know, yeah, if you have a bad service or a bad meal or a bad hotel room, you normally complain. But in whiskey, people just seem to move on, or they'll give that distillery another chance. They'll make another purchase. We should be more, not aggressive, but more vocal sometimes. You know, email them. I actually haven't had a bad enough bottle to prompt that, but I would be really interested if people have emailed a distillery or a producer and actually said, this was really bad, you know, or this didn't match what I was doing, or this was so much. What sort of reply or response they got back? You know, how good is the customer service?
There's a guy in the comments who might be able to answer that. I don't know if he'd be able to give us a short, succinct answer, but there's a guy called Ben Marnock. Not his real name, it's a play on the Glen Marnock bottlings. He's one of my patrons, met him in real life, really good guy. But he's just that guy. He won't let it slide. If something's amiss, he'll be on the phone to them. He'll be calling people. Like I'm almost certain that he's even managed to get Fred Lang's ear a few times to talk about their bottlings. So he might put a comment on and see if you get a good response from these customer services, Ben. Then I call him Ben on the live streams. I'm not sure if he wants people to know his real name, but yeah, let us know in the comments and we'll come back to it.
Yeah, I think the Douglas Lang bottle that inflamed the Tormore 4 on the Speyside. It's the green bottle with the gent on it. It begins with V, but I'm forgetting what the name is. Yeah, we detested that. I think we got the ear of the brand rep at the time who was doing the tasting, but Yeah, be vocal, definitely. And people are reading our scores, and I'm sure they're reading our comments, and hopefully that's sinking in a little bit. That, you know, I mean, one of our great reviews this year was the Macallan concept, you know, and it's funny because Macallan in big letters they've put con, you know, they've almost magnified the con part, you know, which to me seems so hilarious. But we deconstructed their packaging and whiskey on that, and it was a great review. But at the same time, you can't charge money for what is fairly inept. But Macallan are the masters of getting people to pay more for less. And you know, it doesn't seem like ending at the moment, which is a real shame.
Yeah, I think it'll slowly come through. I haven't covered any Macallan on the channel because it's just lack of opportunity. To be honest, I won't buy a bottle because I don't like their flavor profile. It's I find it overly sulfured a lot, and people often have a go at me for that because it's a flavor profile that not a lot of people get. But I get sulfur in quite a lot of their whiskies, especially the 12 years, the variants of awful flavors for me. I can't bring it up. And they're not about to send me anytime soon. So that kind of puts me at a stalemate with covering their stuff. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to get it anywhere. No. So never mind. I've got enough to cover.
Yeah, they don't send us stuff. The one Edrington brand does, and that's Highland Park. I think that was because I was leaving some very negative comments on Instagram about some of their products and releases. And they actually, you know, were very proactive and actually got a hold of me and contacted the UK operation, and now they send us stuff. Sometimes it's difficult to review, and sometimes it's full of that Viking paraphernalia. But you know, you have hope that one day there'll be a good priced whiskey with plenty of flavour. But yeah, Macallan is. Yeah, I've got one bottle, which is the one I did with the dummies. It's not here just now. I have no other Macallan, and I have no intention of buying any. I used to like the 18, but I think it's over £300 now, perhaps. You know, it's just gone ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's forget about that, and maybe Glendronach's going the same as well. But it's sad. But there's plenty of whiskies out there, so you just move on. You find something else.
Absolutely, and that's probably a good sentiment. I don't know how you feel about moving on to the next whiskey we've got, because I had someone comment a bit earlier on saying that they saw the bottle of the Daftmill as well and wondered if we're doing some product placement. But no, we're definitely not doing that. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly don't get paid by anybody to do anything apart from YouTube's advertisements. So
no, we don't. We got approached recently to do some social media posts for a set fee, and we said no. We do things on our terms. So Daftmill, yes, this is the winter batch.
Yeah, I was going to ask if this was the winter or the summer, but I did assume the winter because it's the newer one, and I'm grateful for this dram actually, because I did look at buying a bottle, but again it got to the point where it's like £100 odd or something for this bottle. And
it's go one way, I think now.
So, but I hear a lot of people raving about it. Roy, I've done this in an Aquavite glass because Roy is always raving on about Daftmill.
Roy was there for my tasting at the Fife Festival, where we opened the first ever, the inaugural Daftmill bottle, and I think we had summer. This is my winter. So all the Daftmills I've opened because that's what it's for. But no, this winter one's good. There's actually 2 Daftmills coming out tomorrow, single casks. This isn't product placement. This is just heads up if you didn't know. Roma Whiskies are releasing theirs, and I think Luvians are releasing theirs as well. But they're even less numbers than this. It's going to be frightfully impossible to get a hold of them, just because you're fighting the flippers mainly. And people as well, they want to actually open the damn thing, which is what Francis wants, who does all the distilling at Daftmill. So see what you think of it.
Yeah, I mean, I tried it a bit earlier before the stream, and I maybe tried things in the wrong order, probably like we have done just now. But it's I got this kind of like overwhelming kind of malty flavor off of it. Like it's that smell where you walk into a distillery and you can really smell that kind of malt in the air. And usually I pin that on young whiskey, but this is what's it, a 12-year, I guess, by the time it was bottled.
Yeah, it's 2006. This is 12 years old, give or take. Francis was big on just waiting for the right moment when he felt it was ready. So he was in a position not to bottle it 3 years. He waited till he was happy at 12. For many years, you would do the Daffmill tour. They're not open to the public, but you'd ask and he'd let you in, and he'd take you around the distillery, and you'd go to the casks. And that was the only place for many years you could ever try a Daffmill, was in the warehouse. And you know, you'd watch Francis, nose it, taste it. Nah, not ready. And off we'd go. So finally it's here, which is great, but it's proven difficult for a lot of people to get a hold of again. So because it's such a small distillery as well, I'm not sure how you combat that.
No, and it's the problem with popularity, I guess, isn't it? I've just had another super chat come in from my pal Colt of the Red Barrel. If you're into your gaming, you should go and check him out. He's not so active on YouTube anymore, but he definitely should be, and maybe would be if he got a few more subs. So if you want to go check him out, he said, I heard this was a rum channel now because I did a rum for the first time this week.
Ah, okay.
And he said, have I heard of Captain Morgan? Obviously, he's joking, poor lad. But I was expecting there to be a big backlash over this rum, to the point where I even put it on a Twitter poll to let the public decide if I did it or not. But I was sent this, I don't know if you probably didn't catch it, but I was sent this sample from Boutique Rum. Well, no zoom. The Coroni 20-year-old, which is a closed thing. So I thought, I've got to do it. Well, I'm not really into rum, so I don't think I'll be buying bottles and reviewing them regularly, but I thought, why not? But yeah, I had a few comments from people that came out of the woodwork and were like, actually, we really like rum, maybe you should do some more. But I was like, I don't know.
We've got a rum section on the site as well, and we're all fans actually of rum, but and Mark's obviously got Renegade rum going forward as well, with the Waterford responsibilities. But yeah, rum's a whole different field. It's good fun. I think it's good to dip into rum or mezcal now and again, because it forces you to use different flavors and aromas that maybe you don't normally get in an everyday whiskey. Well, I like Hamden because it's very high on esters and it can be really, really insane. But the Coronis I've had as well, really dense, oily, have been good fun. But I don't have many rums here, and it's unfortunately, you know, Scotch is so big, and and there's so many bottles coming out. I'm turning down more bottles now than I actually am buying. You haven't got room for rum, unfortunately. You don't need, or mezcal, which I enjoy as well. So you have to solely concentrate on what your first love is, and that's whiskey. And we don't have endless amounts of cash either. But
yeah, definitely agree with that. Some of the comments coming through are saying, people are saying generally that they're okay with rum. Whiskey Jason says no vodka. New Jam Drinker says no gin. But the last drop, these are all channels as well, by the way, says don't forget the cognac. I actually went to the cognac show. I picked up this, which was, I'm not even going to try and say, I think it was like Chateau de Montefort or something like that. It was only about 35 quid in the end, but
yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I was impressed actually with that. I wasn't expecting to like cognac, but they offered me a free trade pass day thing, so I thought, I'll go and see what it's all about. I'll probably cover a couple. I don't know, I'm not sure yet. We'll see.
That and Armagnac are good as well, you know. And I've been on some tastings where the host has actually dropped in a cognac or an Armagnac into the lineup, and people haven't picked it out. So, and also, as you say, it's a lot cheaper, and you can get some real good age for a good price. In the Malt Society bottle, some as well.
Yeah, I said this about this rum I was just talking about before. It's I'm not sure what they did to it. It's like mostly aged in it's like 14 years in an ex-bourbon barrel, and then they flipped it over into something else. So it's really taken on this kind of like bourbon characteristic. And I was saying in the video that I don't think, if it was in a bourbon blind lineup, I'm not sure it was different enough for me to say that it wasn't a bourbon. Like, you know how you'd think it's a rum, it must stand out. But
yeah.
But I was smelling it, and I tried to think, like, if it was blind, what I would think. You know, it's difficult to do without actually doing it. But
yeah, I think you have to draw the line. There's like the commercial supermarket rums have got so much flavour in and sugar added to them, whereas your Coroni, that's more a traditional rum. You know, that will fit more into those sort of lineups, I think. I can't believe we're talking about rum.
I know, I'm sorry. It just moves on, doesn't it? Let's go back to the Daffmill. Now, this Daffmill, the reason why we talked before when we were trying to set this up, that we thought this would be a good idea, because this scored an 8 out of 10. From
myself and Rose, yeah. The story of this bottle, or her bottle, is really funny, because the flippers got a hold of some bottle. Well, they ordered them, I think it's from the Whiskey Barrel, which I know, you know, some people have got issues with. But they went through the orders and they sifted out the ones who double ordered, and they put them up. So I managed to get one. And I said, well, I've already got I've probably got more than a couple bottles, to be fair. I've been quite lucky. But I said, can you send this to my friend in California? Because I think she'd really appreciate Daphmel. So yeah, they sent it on the Friday. It was there by the Monday. Probably the first bottle of Daphmel in America. And we sat down together, cracked it open, and we did a cross-Atlantic tasting, which then formed the bulk of that piece. And we both came out with the same score, which is an 8. I don't think it's as good as the summer, but I know some people prefer the winter over the summer. And I know Roy probably prefers the inaugural release, which is the frightfully expensive release I opened for him. But each to their own. The sherry one that's come out a couple months ago by Berry Brothers, I didn't like that at all. That's too heavily sherried. And tomorrow's releases, I think, are both more bourbon cask, and I think they're hard to separate. But I think the Luvian's bottle, I think, was my favourite. Because if we went to the Fife Whisky Festival, Francis was behind the stall, and he had all the official release bottles, but then he had what was coming as well if you spoke to him. So you could actually, that was probably the main stall for a lot of people at the festival, a chance to try Daphmel. And these people only live like a couple miles from the distillery, and they don't see it on the shelves because it just goes.
Yeah, it's just off. I mean, I was gutted actually because I again pulling it away from the whiskey, but I spent a lot of time in Fife as a younger man because my wife went to St Andrews University.
Oh yeah.
I actually ended up getting married in St Andrews as well, so we spent a lot of time up there. But they only just about opened Kingsbarns Distillery. And the one in Guardbridge as well. I forget what are they actually called that St Andrews?
Yeah, but it is Guardbridge, yeah.
And they'd only just really opened those, and they weren't really even doing proper tours. I did go around Kingsbarns in the end the year after I went back, but yeah. So this Daphmel wasn't. He was obviously making stuff while I was up there, but I hadn't heard of it, and I wasn't able to get in contact. So next time I go, St Andrews holds a special place in my heart, so I'll end up there again, I'm sure. And I'll have to try and give him a call and take a little diversion on the way back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Francis is a farmer, so he'll find the time. He's very obliging, and he's just salt of the earth, and he'll tell you exactly what he thinks about certain things. But yeah, St Andrews, yeah, Eden Mill, or the Fife scene's thriving now. You've got our own whiskey festival. I'm in Fife, so Daphmel's my local. We've got Inchdarney, which I think are doing some really good stuff, but they haven't released anything yet. Eden Mill, they've just moved to a new site, a new distillery. Kingsbarns just released their a little bit too young for me, but solid enough 3-year-old. And of course we've got Cameron Bridge, which you either love or hate. I'm sure there's another one in Fife, I'm forgetting now. But no, Daphmel's my favourite by far, because he just went for that classic sort of Rosebank lowland.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's important to stick with that kind of lowlandy thing. I think I think nowadays with all the transportation options, it's probably quite easy to pick and choose whatever flavour profile you want. I guess, like obviously traditionally, Speyside wouldn't be very peated because they didn't have any peat available to them. I guess is that right? Am I getting my geography right there?
Some of the older distilleries would have used peat just because it was their fuel source, but certainly the modern age, yeah, you're right, definitely.
So yeah, I think it's important to kind of have that, dare I say, terroir or the provenance, which is I think going to be more and more important as we go on. I've been trying to think about what the future of whiskey might be, and hopefully we're ushering in this new age of maybe young whiskey but quality whiskey.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm happy to see. I think I was saying the other day that the running joke I always make is that YouTube only first existed in 2006. So you're talking about the number that's on the bottle you've got in front of you there. So the guy Francis who made it, he couldn't possibly have known what technology would be like when he's actually putting this whiskey out. It turns out to be quite advantageous to him because it's spreading the word quite nicely. But I think things like you look at your Glenlivet and Glenfiddich 12 years, when that was put into a cask, YouTube was only barely a fledgling thing. Some of those old distilleries haven't really caught on to social media yet and what it can do for them. No. Or maybe they just choose to ignore it. I don't know.
You can tell the ones that have the same brand agency, or who do their marketing, and they all publish their tweets at the same time, and they all say similar things. I think people really like almost. I like the craft side of things, but also probably the craft side of social media, where it's just somebody who's down to earth, is maybe posting something a bit different or a little bit personal, and that's coming from people at the distillery rather than somebody in headquarters. In Glasgow or London, for instance. So no, definitely. I don't know what the future of whiskey holds.
And it's the funny thing is, it's someone's job to figure that out, isn't it? I mean, they're having to forecast for decades ahead of time. Don't envy them that job at all, because it's changed so much. And what I don't want to happen, obviously, is that whiskey gets so popular that it has another crash, because that's what spirits do throughout the ages, right? They ebb and they flow, and they become more popular and less popular. We'll see. We just have to enjoy what we get right now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if I love the history of whiskey, and not just drinking it, but going back and reading about it. It's just a cycle nature, and we probably are due one. What will trigger it? What will happen? We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of new distilleries that maybe are relying too much on the cafe or the merchandise, or bottling at 3 years, or gin, or new make. And to me, it's the ones that have got, a quality product, like you say, regardless of age, that will see through. There's also a lot of something that's not talked about a lot is who's investing in these distilleries, because it's not just UK people. There's people from all over the world sticking their money into these distilleries, and they're there to make money at the end of the day. They can portray an image or whatever, but Lindor's up the road, that took serious money to bring about. That was the Fife distillery, I forgot. Lindor's Abbey, they've got loads of history there, but they needed to get help to bring it to life, and I think it was maybe £5-6 million, I think it was, perhaps, to do, which is a huge investment.
Yeah, absolutely massive. People have often said to me, like, I don't know if you talk to many people outside that don't know much about whiskey. A lot of people in my day job don't know anything, and they ask me, like, oh yeah, when are you going to kind of bottle your own whiskey? And I was like, man, I mean, even just bottling it, like an independent bottler, like, for one, I don't think I would be able to sell 50 bottles of it for a start, but just to even go down that road is so much headache. And to set up a distillery, even a micro distillery, would take. I mean, like there's what's the one in Yorkshire? I've forgotten the name of them now. The Cooper King distillery.
Yes,
they're a self-built distillery, and they've done it on a relative budget. But even then, they had land and things like that they had already that they could build on. So, and I think the Cotswolds, they spent a good couple of million, but then they had to do a crowdfund investment thing as well. That was on top of the selling their first 3-year-old bottles 4 years in advance. So yeah, it's an expensive game, and people have got to be paid for those 3 years while we're waiting.
Exactly. I mean, the guys at Dornoch, who I know, they wanted to own the distillery themselves. They didn't want to get people buying in or investing, so they did crowdfunding. I think they even sold their own house and maybe moved to something else, and sold some of their bottles. They put everything into the distillery because that was their heart and soul. At the end of the day, they'll talk as well about all the red tape you have to go through to actually get the spirit flowing. And they've done it, and they will be bottling, I don't know, they're at 2 years now, but they've got another year to go, so we'll see. So I'm excited by distilleries like that. There are a few in Scotland which are really, really promising. But yeah, they've taken a long time, a lot of effort, like you say, to reach 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely fair. Let's go back round to the Darth Mills then, and talk about the actual score itself. We've been going on so much. You finished your dram, have you?
Yeah, it's too drinkable. That's the problem.
So you scored this an 8 out of 10, which
I
is
did, yeah.
a lot of people would say that's on their scoring systems, it would be like an amazing whiskey, which is like, it's a very good one in your scoring system, isn't it? But it's not reaching that kind of 9-10 perfection almost.
Yeah, it's probably what average is 5, what good is a 6, very good's a 7, excellence probably an 8, then the 9 and the 10. So no, it's definitely up there to me. Because I'd had the summer, I prefer the summer. The summer was a 9. I can't remember what I scored the inaugural actually. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's well made. It tastes like Little Mel to me. It's got that lowland fruits that he was going for. I also think as well it's a very distinctive whiskey. Nowadays, a lot of these new distilleries that are coming out, they've had consultants. They're aiming to have a very commercial spirit, or one that fits a certain market, you know, which is very approachable for all ages and all experiences. So you can see that from a business point of view, but very few distilleries are actually saying, you know, I'm going to make something that reflects where we are, or, you know, the say one on a remote Scottish island. I would like that to taste like the remote Scottish island rather than Speyside. And Daphne being a farm distillery, and it's his barley in the distillery, he's gone for that. He loves the lowland style, and that's what he's gone for. And, you know, it took 12 years to get there, but he's got there, I think. I just like it. It has that sweetness. It has the fruits. It's got a lot more complexity than you would actually think. I mean, it is 46, so it has been taken down a bit. And it's a vatting of 6 first fill bourbon barrels.
That's not a lot, is it? That's not a lot at all.
No. I mean, Daphne don't produce much at all. I'm guessing here, is it 20,000 litres a year? That might be a guess. But I mean, that was just over 1,600 bottles, that release. And I think that was, is it £145 maybe? I think. I can't remember. But that's the price of Daphne, unfortunately, to try it.
Definitely. The last drop, I know you touched on this on the Scotch Test Dummies stream, but the last drop is asking, have you scored any 10 out of 10s? I know you have, but
yeah. One was Ard Baggy had brought up one evening, and Roy's had it as well. It's the 1973 Old Pulteney, and Andy was staying up here, and we're at this very table actually, and he said, "Right, Jay, I brought this up. Let's crack it open." In typical Andy style, I thought he was going to pull out a bottle of Bell's or something, but he pulls out this Black as Soot whiskey, and it was a Pulteney by Gordon MacPhail. That was a 10. I've had Glenlossie from 1966, which I had at the Gathering. That was a 10 straight away. It was just superb. There's been other ones. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I mean, an Ardbeg Provenance 1974, that would be one. You know, your Brewer 1972, you know, the classics, you know, the stuff you don't see anymore. But I would love to score a new release, young whiskey, up that end. You know, if one came out, I would love that more than anything. You know, one that just knocked your socks off.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll happen, but I'm not sure it can at the moment. You know, maybe it's we need to knock a few of these. Like I've been saying about no age statements. You know, that's not necessarily a negative word. If you can call it one word, it's that you can have good no age statements, but there's a lot of bad ones out there. There's a lot of bad age statements as well. I mean, I would love to try some out. There's people talking about the 1973 OP, as Roy's talking about it and saying that it ruined his day.
Yeah. He wanted to meet me. This might be slightly wrong, but me and Andy were security guard-ish at the festival because Justine had roped us in. So I put that over the security tannoy. Andy, come on over. Someone wants to meet you, and it was Roy because I knew he was a big fan of Roy's. He just whipped that out, and then that ruined. I think after that, Roy had to leave and go to Luvian's down the road, which is a classic shop, as you know, because that was just the festival over after he'd had that dram.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. That he had to leave the festival straight after, which I think is hilarious. But I can imagine it. I mean, the festivals I go to, I've been to the London one a couple of times, and that's obviously all incredible. But the local ones in Birmingham are just only really starting to get established and pull those bigger brands in. So I tend to be trying a lot of entry-level stuff and what's available now. So there's never really any that kind of mind-blowing stuff there. Looking forward to that happening at some point, you know, getting to know the reps a little bit more. And as you said earlier, they tend to have under-the-counter stuff for the people that really do engage them, rather than just waving the glass in their face and saying, "Give me the most expensive one you've got, please." So it's hopefully it will start picking up in the Midlands. But I should say as well, that's not a completely fair statement, because the proper Midlands Whisky Festival over in Stourbridge is incredible. It's just a little bit too far for me to get to because it takes like 3 trains, which is ridiculous.
No, I mean we've got the one that's famous up here is the Whiskey Fringe, which is during the August Edinburgh Festival. That sells out in about 5 minutes. But people do treat it like a session now. You know, they get the ticket for 30 quid or whatever, and they go in, and like you say, they just get absolutely paralytic, and they're sticking the glasses under the, you know, you want that opportunity to speak to who's behind the stall. You know, what's so good or different about this? And they have a thing there called halftime oranges. So you get your token, and there's a board on the floor where it shows you what the halftime orange is. So they ring the bell or whatever, and then you make your pick. So I've noticed over the years the halftime oranges have sort of withered in terms of age and exclusivity, because that's just the way whiskey is now. You know, getting your halftime pour of Brora, unfortunately, is long gone, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. Last job's put a follow-up question saying, so could you argue that there are two levels or groups of whiskey, the wow stuff and the stuff you can reasonably buy? I was thinking about that while you were just talking. I was like, I don't necessarily think I would agree with that, because that would imply that there's two distinct sections, and there's definitely some blur the lines whiskies going on that meet that full grade. But yeah, I mean, I've had the opportunity to try some fabulous whiskey since I started doing this. A great example is a 58-year-old North British grain whiskey that got sent to me. And I said on the video to that, I was like, look, I'm trying this because it's been sent to me. I'm not selling it to you. Don't go and buy it because it's £1,700 a bottle. But I have to try this whiskey because it's 58 years old, which is insane.
Exactly. That's what it's there for.
Yeah. So I would say, like, you know, I've got a kind of bracket that I have that's far too expensive for me to suggest anybody pay for it, and that usually goes from about £300 onwards. To be fair, you know, that's slightly quite excessive. And then I've got my kind of affordable stuff, and then the stuff in between. But like I said, there's always stuff that blurs those lines. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think probably, you know, it depends when you've come into whiskey as well. You know, I think there is a shutting of the door on certain whiskies unless you've got some serious money where you can track down these bottles or go to these bars. A lot of this stuff now is unobtainable, or if it is, it's at a price now which an everyday person would think, "No danger, I'm not having any of that." You know, so that was what makes the Gathering in Rotterdam so good for me, because you do get whiskies there for a reasonable price, and there's thousands there, and you can go there and you can probably have the 72 Brora, you can have, you know, your Macallans and these things for, you know, they are expensive, but they are still, you know, 2CL, they're good pours, knowledgeable people, but these, you know, eventually these whiskies will dry up. Because there's only a certain amount, and also there's a lot of these whiskies now that aren't being opened because they are so valuable. So yeah, I think, you know, we can all get a little bit too whiskey geeky sometimes. So you try and resist that. You know, if you want that geek sort of side of things, you know, there's Whiskey Fun, where you can see some of these incredible whiskies that Serge gets to review, and you're like, my goodness, you know, what you'd give to try one of those. That's just the way it is. So certainly for us, you know, the 1 to 10, it doesn't matter on the age, you know, it's all down to the whiskey itself. Price does come into it, you know. There is, I was just reviewing one doing the notes for it last night, and I'm thinking 6 or 7, and you know what, it's £75 a bottle, and I'm thinking if that was a little bit cheaper, I'd give it a 7, but it's going to get 6. So price is really important for us, but also I think we're very aware, you know, some of the guys get the bottles, you know, not the bottles, but the samples sent to them. You know, we do get a little bit of PR stuff contacting us now, but we always have our feet on the ground, because just because we're getting something for free doesn't mean it's good, you know, and that's the important thing. As for the geeky stuff, I guess they're called unicorn whiskies, some people call them, these ones at the upper end. I do think those, yeah, I do think those, the opportunity to try them is just getting less and less. I've been lucky, I've had some, Andy will have had some, you might have had some, Roy as well, you know, Glasgow Rare and Old Show, but eventually, you know, they'll look back on, probably people who come into whiskey in 10 years' time will look back on our generation saying, you know, you had it so good.
Yeah, and I think that's what I always find is that I remember when I first started getting into whiskey, I remember hearing comments from people going, you don't know what you're talking about. There's, you know, back in my day we had this. And I was like, oh man, come on, whiskey's changing. But it's happening under my feet now. I mean, I got a bottle of Highland Park 21 years for £100 few years ago. Now that's gone up, gone silly money, and things that I loved are becoming more and more expensive and less affordable to me. So I'm having to find a new niche within it, and that's this kind of like this craft stuff we were talking about earlier, like the staff mill. That's more affordable. It might seem expensive for the age statement, and that's the thing that bogs a lot of people down, is that I used to get a 12-year-old for 25 quid, therefore they must all be 25 quid. That's just not the case anymore, unfortunately.
No, I mean, you've got to look at it. I mean, that was 150-ish, say, for a 12-year-old. The Glasgow distillery would have gladly sold you their inaugural whiskey for £100 for a 50 cl bottle, which was 3 years old, you know. So yeah, I do wonder as well, some of the bigger players, they're probably looking at these young distilleries, you know, selling their 3-year-old whiskey for £100, and it's selling. And do people like Macallan, Highland Park looked at that going, well, we're the premium brands here. You know, we're selling our 21-year-old for a couple hundred. Should we be asking more for that, you know? So I think, you know, prices will probably go up again, unfortunately, as people try to premiumize their whiskies, like we saw with Mortlach, and we're seeing again with Glenrothes, I think, as well. And Highland Park, we've seen definitely. And people are buying it, and if they're enjoying it, if they're opening it, then good on them. But I forget what even the question was there.
I think you covered it anyway, and you ended on a good point, which is probably a good point to start winding the stream up, and that's the opening of bottles. I think I've got maybe 40 or 50 bottles in the house. I tend to keep a good rotation going, so I don't have too many at any one time. But out of those 40 or 50, I've maybe got 3 or 4 that are sealed. It's going to show me something.
Yeah, so I'm just looking. Give me a second.
All right, but yeah, so I say I maybe only have 3 or 4 that are sealed, and they're usually because I've got another one already opened. But I've got a really good / bad habit where if I buy a bottle that I'm not sure about, like it is a good example. Again, the Corabiakin, not one to keep. It's very readily available. So the minute I got home, I took the seal off, even though I wasn't planning on having a dram. It's open then, and then I've got to drink it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Roy will tell you as well. I mean, I did that Fife First Festival, and we opened the First Eden Mill, which nobody had seen opened. The bottle, one of 140 or whatever it was, went for £7,000. I opened mine. We opened the first Staff Mill, which is now going for £1,000 at auction. Just didn't care because it's there to be shared. So I actually went off. I've got 2 bottles. I will open one, but one's from my friend Rose, who is a label. You know, she doesn't like creases and stuff in labels, so I had to make sure which one's the best of the 2. But this is a Dornoch bottle that's just sold out. But this is what it's about to me. You know, you actually have to open the thing, even though you know it's a lovely label. You have to open the whiskey. I think in March on Instagram I did the open your bottles thing, and I think maybe opened 24 bottles that month, which was a little bit excessive, but it was good fun. But of course that means that I've probably got 24 bottles that I need to finish before I open up another one. So we'll see. So this is 4 years old. No, 5 years old. It's a Campbelltown blend. So I just love the fact that it's 5 years old. 40 quid. Can you go any wrong with that? I don't know. We'll find out. But just open these things up. You know, I see far too many things on Instagram, unopened bottles, or you know, they take the picture and you actually can't see the seal. You know, you're like, you know, they're holding it and you're like, nah, come on. I mean, I've got bottles I haven't opened yet. I'm sure everybody else does, but they're there for a special occasion or a special moment. And when that comes, then you open it.
Yeah, I fully agree. And the comments went not nuts, but there was a few people when they saw you reaching over to get something. Roy was like, "Oh, he's gonna pop something," which is good.
Oh, so I've got that there. Yeah, I was going to pop it, but I've just been too busy. Yeah, I've got some cage bottlings over there as well, but I'm very aware as well. I'm like going back to Adam's piece about drinking too much. I think, you know, we're getting to this danger now where we always charge into the next release. So we should be enjoying what we've got open while it's open. You can't have everything. So enjoy the whiskey you've got open and take your time with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, well, hopefully you'll let us know what that one is like before we leave up. But it's really is one of the mantras that I go for. In fact, I was saying the other day, a quick story. I have technically just flipped my first bottle, but what I did was I swapped an Elijah Craig 12-year labelled with a friend of mine for a bunch of samples. That was it. So he got into contact with me, and I've been keeping it for a special occasion, because what I wanted to do was a 12-year versus the new small batch comparison. But I just haven't got around to buying the new small batch yet. I've had plenty. I've got probably about 13 bourbons down here yet to review. So I was like, it's way down the list. And then when he contacted me saying, and he had all these independent bottlings, I did an Instagram story. He sent me 14 samples in the end. So for me, I definitely won out on that. But the intention was never to sell it. I mean, for something like that, I mean, what's the point? It's never going to be hundreds of pounds, is it? But
no, but I think as well, I think you need to define what a flipper is. You know, everybody just uses the word, but to me, a flipper is somebody that queues or gets the bottle to immediately sell on that day almost. But, you know, if you found a bottle the back of your cupboard a year later or whenever, or, you know, I'm forever finding bottles I've forgotten about. But, you know, is that flipping? You know, because, you know, if you go online and you look at it and it's worth like whatever, £1,000, you know, are you really going to get £1,000 worth of enjoyment out of that? You know, so I think there's some people quite rightly are selling the bottles because, you know, maybe they've got a Macallan Elkies or something like that, and it goes for crazy money. You know, you can't deny that. But it's the people that are like queuing up overnight, causing traffic jams, just because they're immediately going to hand over the bottle like they do in Islay to the auction van that's coming round. But you also see retailers now selling these bottles at secondary prices as well. So it's not just the auctioneers that should be getting a telling off now and again. It should be some of these retailers.
Well, I try to keep a reasonable relationship with distilleries, let's say. But an English distillery, well, I was going to say not be named, but I basically just did then. It's the English distillery. I don't know if you saw what happened with that. And I think did I email it to you?
Was this the Game of Thrones thing?
I think I sent it to Mark, I think, because I was just
I think he went mad about it. Yeah,
it made me so angry, so immeasurably angry, that they posted on their own website £1,500 for this set that wasn't even theirs. They didn't make it, and I just was like, I've got to call them out on it. And I went on a bit of a campaign on Twitter. They didn't take it down, but they removed the tweet at least. But I was just like, there's just everything wrong with it. It made me so mad that they would do that. But
that was just the eye of the storm, wasn't it? I mean, so many people had those sets and they thought they were sitting on a gold mine, and yet the realistic people of us knew that Diageo probably had a load more stock. And as soon as the series finished, they thought, right, let's flood the market with what we've got left, because that's it over. So I think some people probably lost out a lot of money on these sets, and we've still not reviewed a single one of those releases, just because, you know, it was just getting ridiculous to try and get a hold of one almost. But now they're probably in every Diageo distillery you walk into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my White Walker video did exceptionally well for me. It's about a third of my entire viewership across my entire 3-year journey, and I was just lucky with that, to be honest. I got it first. I got it right away, and I reviewed it and said it was trash, and people liked that. But I've got 2 bottles of it sitting in boxes down here for a friend who lives in Australia who couldn't get it, so he bought it and shipped it to my house. And this poor guy at the time thought that it would be a nice limited edition. I spoke to Colin Dunn. He said to me that, and this was 6 months ago, he said to me that they'd already shipped 1.5 million bottles of it. And by definition, it was limited because it was going to end. But it's not cool, man.
No, the terminology, isn't it? I mean, what's limited? They would say it's time limited, but most people would think limited as being like a single cask almost. You know, it has a specific number to it. But that's just some of the tricks they play. But yeah, 1.5 million. That's that's a lot of White Walker.
It's a lot of White Walker. A lot of it went to America, to be fair, because they love it. And more power to them. If it brings a couple of people into the Scotch world, then more power to them. But I've still got my bottle downstairs because I can't even drink it. I've got so much better stuff to reach to. A couple of people are asking for tasting notes on what you're drinking there. So I don't know if you're on a neck.
Well, hold on, give me pour some more.
What have you got?
So this is 5-year-old. It's sold out now apparently. Someone was telling me this is the Dornoch blended malt Scotch whisky, distilled in Campbelltown, 2014, 386 bottles at 50%. It's basically, I think, North Star did a Campbelltown blend earlier this year or last year, 4 years old. I think Ralphie maybe might have reviewed it as well. And that was basically Glen Scotia with a drop of Springbank, I think it is. And I think this is just exactly the same sort of thing.
Nice. I mean, to be honest, I hadn't heard of it, and that's not a rare thing. I don't have my finger squarely on the pulse with the date.
There's so much stuff, isn't there? I mean, unless you're on the mailing list, then you actually, how many random junk emails do you get? I mean, I get sick of Pizza Express telling me every morning about a pizza. You know, you just delete. So you'll just delete the Highland Park or the Macallan that comes through, or the Scotch Malt Society or another one that leave an email. You know, like delete. You know. So yeah, you've got to be on the ball, but also just know which one's best. But the Dornoch guys are doing some great single casts, a bit like Charlton Whiskies. Have you had any Charlton Whiskey?
I haven't yet, no.
Yeah, they do some. He picks some really good casts as well. So these little independent guys are really interesting, and they're charging, I mean, £40, fair price, you know.
Yeah, that's actually a really good price, especially in today's age. I know it's not the oldest thing in the world, but like we said earlier, I don't think that really matters anymore. I think I'm about to be accosted by a moth. So if you see a moth flying around.
Well, there's plenty of moths as well at the moment, actually, I must say. We were talking about the heat earlier, but there are definitely a few flying around.
Oh God, this is a beast as well. I hope it actually does get on the camera. It'll be hilarious. Well, there you go. I think I think we overran just a little bit. I was planning to do about an hour, but we're about an hour and a half now, so we should probably wind it up. But thank you very much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure to have you. And to talk and to send me these whiskies as well. I know even you said like there's a 4 out of 10 versus an 8 out of 10. Both absolute pleasure to drink. Some stuff I've never tried before. Daft Mills. I never thought I'd actually get to try that. I really didn't. I'm sure I could have tapped someone for a sample before, but I don't like to ask usually. So a real pleasure to be able to try that. Thank you very much for sending it to me.
No, not at all. I mean, that's what it's about. You know, I mean, this is my second bottle of that, and I'd probably say I've shared most of that so far. Because I really enjoy it and I enjoy sharing. And I know Roy's done a thing on sharing recently as well, you know, so if we, you know, we all can't afford a bottle, so if we can share it, then, you know, at least we're getting a little taste of what we might like.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm all about that as well when I can. I don't always have the best stuff involved, but I tend to try and go and share some. I'm reading the comments as well. People are asking for more, but unfortunately I've got to go to bed because I do an engineering job that needs to be up early in the morning for. But
give them a sequel sometime if they really want it. But you know, it's yeah. I mean, Roy's on holiday. Someone's got to step up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely will try and do more live streams. It's a struggle for me to do the live streams at a decent time where I can capture the US audience as well. This is the sort of time, but it's just a little bit too late. Maybe one day YouTube will pay me enough I can do it full time and I can do it whenever anyone else does, but that isn't right now. But yeah, so again, thank you very much for coming. If anyone doesn't know who Jason is, you're going to check him out on the various social medias. Whisky Rover on some, Wraith Rover on some, Malt on some.
Probably the easiest thing, if you go to Malt, you'll find out one of my reviews there, and we've got little bios at the bottom, and that'll have links, because there is a Whisky Rover, but I'm Whisky_Rover, so he's lapping up all the abuse for me, I think, so it's good. Yeah,
always good to have that little shield. Unfortunately I don't have that, but the thing people really struggle with me is spelling whiskey. Obviously there's a portion of the world that wants to add an E into that, so I think that's where a lot of my missing emails go. But
no, whenever we're editing an article and we're interviewing somebody, you're like, do we put the E in or not, particularly if it's from the American side? And we've got obviously our American writers and an American editor who love the E, and they love putting it in, so you just let them go with it. But I can see why it just causes so much frustration for people.
Absolutely. Just before you go, one more. Stephen Davison's just asking for another clarification on what that bottle is you're drinking.
Sure. This is the Dornoch blended malt Scotch whisky. So this is the Campbelltown 2014, 386 bottles. Somebody did blame me on Instagram today that because I posted about it yesterday, it sold out. I don't think I'm that much of an influencer, but they do have other bottles on sale, all with this label by Katie. She does different styles. I had the Kalila last night, and I think that's very good, if a little bit too much priced. I've got the Inch Fag to have sometime as well, and I've got the Ardmore to have as well. So check them out. They're just a good independent bottler, but that one is gone. But sometimes they get stock in occasionally for whatever reason. They maybe find a case. So if it does come, I think it's early days yet, but you can tell it. I mean, to me, it is Glen Scotia.
Brilliant.
Bourbon cask. It's light. It's good. You know, for 40 quid, fine.
Yeah, can't argue with that. And like I said, I'm getting into my kind of Campbelltowns at the moment. It's an area I haven't really explored until recently, but I'm trying to get more into it and really liking what I'm finding there.
Good. Well, don't ask Phil for any advice about Campbelltown, okay?
Okay. I think he just said about, he said, good night, lads, great show. And a lot of people are saying that. So thank you very much. That's good feedback from us. I think we've had some really good chat tonight, especially about all the scoring whiskies and expanding on that. But yeah, cool. As always, if you want to do a quick sign off and then we'll close up.
Yeah, so thanks for watching. I haven't done a sign off before. I feel like I'm on the news or something. Thanks again, and over to you.
Yeah, there you go. That's Jason from Malt Review. If you haven't seen the website, then you do have to go and check them out. They do seriously honest reviews with an excellent scoring system. That is, if I was going to score whiskey, I think I would emulate their scoring system. I don't score whiskey through personal reasons. I don't really feel like I'm kind of knowledgeable enough to go down that road yet, but maybe one day I will. We'll see. But thank you very much for watching, everybody. I will try and do more live streams. There's definitely another one coming next month to be announced, but we'll see you all on another stream. Thanks very much, Jason.
Cheers. See ya.
See ya.